Hello and welcome to Enroll. In this class, we will move on to the short answer questions from Unit 3. Okay. So the first important 5 marks question in Unit 3 is the determinants of demand. So coming to SAQ 10, what are the factors that determine the demand? Answer: the demand for a commodity depends on so many factors which are known as the determinants of demand. See, it is not only the price. Of course, the price is the most important factor that that influences the demand for a particular commodity or service. But apart from price, there are so many other factors that affect the demand for a particular commodity. They are all known as the determinants of demand. So the various determinants of demand, as usual, I will briefly explain what are all the various determinants of demand. Then we will come back to the answer. First, most important factor is the price. So what is the relationship between the price of a commodity and the demand for a commodity? If the price of the commodity X increases, the demand for the commodity X decreases. If the price of the commodity X decreases, the demand for the commodity X increases. We all know that the consumers would buy more of a particular commodity when its price falls, and you would buy lesser and lesser of that particular commodity when the price of the commodity increases. This is the natural consumer's tendency, isn't it? So there is an inverse relationship between the price of the commodity and the demand for the commodity. Then the second factor that influences the demand for the commodity is the prices of related goods. Okay, so it is not only the price of its own, the commodities demand also depends upon the prices of its related commodities. There are two types of related commodities. One is the substitute and another one is the complementary. Substitute is that either this commodity or that commodity can be used. So commodity X can be replaced by commodity Y. So for the best example, you can say the coffee and tea. So if the price of coffee increases, that is the price of commodity X increases, the demand for tea, that is the demand for Y commodity, will increase. There is a direct relationship. See, for example, if I am having the habit of consuming 3 cups of coffee in a day, if the price of coffee increases, maybe I will substitute in the evening or morning, instead of coffee I will consume tea. Okay, so what is happening here? The demand for coffee is decreasing from 3 cups to 2 cups, and the demand for tea starts increasing. So earlier I was not having tea, but now I start consuming 1 cup of tea. So what is happening here? When the price of coffee increased, the demand for coffee is reducing, but the demand for tea, its substitute, is increasing. So price of X increases, demand for Y will increase. So there is a direct relationship. Then the another type of commodity, the related commodity, is the complementaries. So complementaries is something you need to consume commodity Y also in order to consume commodity X. So 2 or more goods are needed in order to satisfy one particular want. That is complementary. Either of one commodity can be used in order to satisfy a particular want, that is substitute. Either of one commodity X or Y can be consumed in order to satisfy one particular want, that is a substitute. Complement is both the goods are needed in order to satisfy one particular want. Both commodity X and commodity Y is needed in order to consume, in order to satisfy one particular want, that is complementaries. So we can take the example of sugar and tea. So sugar is a complementary commodity for tea. If the price of sugar increases, what happens? The demand for tea will reduce. It is as good as the price of tea has increased, because most of the people, they would consume tea along with sugar. So if the price of sugar increases, then it is like the demand for tea will decrease. So they are having the indirect relationship. So make a note of it. For the substitutes, it is a direct relationship. For the complementary goods, it is an indirect relationship. Okay. Then the third factor that is equally affecting the demand for a particular commodity is the income of the consumer. Okay. Normally, when the income of the consumer increases, the demand would increase. But it also depends upon what type of good the consumer is consuming. So there are, again here we have two types of goods. One is the superior good or the normal good, and another one is the inferior good. If the income of the consumer increases, he and his family would prefer to consume more of a superior good or a normal good compared to the inferior good. If the income of the consumers are less, then they will be able to consume only the inferior commodity, which is of the lesser price. Okay, because their income is not sufficient for them to afford to buy the superior or the normal good. And but if the income of the consumer increases, why should they consume the inferior good? They can properly consume the normal good, isn't it? So they will go for the superior good. So that's why the income is always represented by capital letter alphabet Y. Okay, so why, if the income of the consumer increases, the demand for X, assuming X is a normal or superior goods, will also increase. If the income decreases, the demand for normal or superior good will also decrease. So there is a direct relationship. On the other hand, inferior good, if the income of the consumer increases, the demand for inferior good Y will decrease. If the income of the consumer decreases, the demand for inferior good will increase. The best example, I can take the example of the Sona Masuri rice and broken rice, isn't it? So if the income of the consumer is more, then he can afford to purchase the Sona Masuri rice. But if the income of the consumer decreases, he has to sacrifice the Sona Masuri rice, and he has to be satisfied with the broken rice, and that is which is an inferior commodity compared to the Sona Masuri rice. Okay, so again remember, for superior or normal good, for your information, both superior and normal good, they both are same. So for the income demand for superior or normal good is direct, and income demand for an inferior good is indirect. Next factor, the fourth one, which is affecting the demand for a particular commodity, is the taste and preferences of the consumer. The taste, the preferences, the changes in fashion, the advertisement, all these things will influence the demand for a particular commodity. One thing we all know, that the taste is not the same for every individual. The taste is not same for every consumer. It varies from one individual to another individual. But on the whole, if the tastes are favorable towards commodity X, then the demand for commodity X will increase. If the taste towards commodity X is unfavorable, then the demand for commodity X will decrease, though they will have a direct relationship. So example I have given here, people nowadays prefer more of a fast food like burgers, pizzas and all, instead of having the traditional snacks like dosas or idlis. And so if the demand is shifting, if the taste and preferences are shifting towards burgers and pizzas, the demand for burgers and pizzas are increasing. On the other hand, the demand for dosas or idli, the traditional snacks are decreasing. Similarly, people nowadays want to wear jeans and t-shirts instead of the traditional formal trousers and shirts. So the demand for jeans and t-shirts are becoming favorable, and their demand is increasing compared to the demand for trousers and shirts, because those the taste have become unfavorable. Okay, then the next factor that influence the demand for a commodity is the population. Both the size of population and the age composition of population affect the demand for a commodity. Generally, if the size of population increases, the demand for all goods in general will increase. People will demand so many things: housing, food grains, then the sanitation facilities, all the services, the hospital facilities, hospital services, the educational services. Generally, the demand for everything will increase if the size of population increases, and vice versa. So again, we are having a direct relationship, and it is not only the size of population but also the age composition of population. That is, what percentage age group in that particular population, out of the total population, which percentage, which age category percentage is more. If for example, if the percentage of babies and infants are more, if there is a rise in the percentage of babies and infants, or rise in the birth rate in a particular country, so automatically out of the total population, the percentage of babies and infants and children are more, then automatically whatever the commodities and services demanded by that section of the population will be more. So if the babies and infants are more, the demand for toys, baby dresses, all those things will increase. On the other hand, if the percentage of youth category, the teenage category, the young age category, if those percentage is more out of the total population, the demand for what is the teenage people, they are not going to demand toys or other things, isn't it? They will be demanding more of whatever the commodities and services preferred by the young category, like demand for mobile phones, demand for bikes, isn't it? So those kind of commodities and the movies, all those the latest movies, so all those things will increase. And if the percentage of old age people is more in the total population, then whatever the commodities and services demanded by old age people, the demand for medicine, the demand for hospital services, the demand for walking sticks, so those kind of commodities and services will increase. Okay, so the size of population as well as the age composition of population affects the demand for a particular commodity. Next, the sixth factor that affects the demand for a commodity is the technological changes. So if any new, because of the technological advancement, if any new discoveries are made, if any new varieties of commodities are discovered, then the demand for old commodities will decrease. Demand for new commodities will increase and the demand for old commodities will decrease. The best example being the demand for mobile phone. Because of the technology, the mobile phone, the cell phones have been discovered. So what is happening? Nobody is demanding the landline phones. Okay, the landline phones have become outdated. So demand for landline phones are decreased, but the demand for mobile or cell phones have increased. Okay, next, seventh factor, changes in weather. This we have come across several times. In summer, people prefer to have cool drinks and cotton clothes, and people wish to travel to colder places. So demand for those kind of commodities and services will increase. On the other hand, in winter, people will prefer to have hot coffee or hot tea, and people will prefer to wear woolen clothes, and people will prefer to travel to warmer places. So the demand for those kind of commodities will increase. In winter, the demand for cool drinks and cotton clothes will decrease. In summer, the demand for hot coffee or tea will decrease, isn't it? So according to the changes in weather, according to the changes in climatic conditions, the demand for a commodity will also change. Then the next one is the state of business. Business always, it moves in ups and downs. Business will not be stable. There will always be upward swing and downward swing in business. So whenever there is an upward swing in business, that is what is called as prosperity. So the upward swinging business, the employment is increasing, the production is increasing, the incomes of the people are increasing, then the demand for the commodities in general will also increase. But the business will not always stay in, move in the upward direction. After reaching the top, it will come down. Okay, this is what is called as the business cycles. So whenever there is a downward swing in business, like recession or depression, so there will be an opposite effect. The incomes are decreasing, the employment is decreasing, the production is decreasing, so the demand for the commodity will also decrease. Okay, so these are all the factors that affect the demand for a particular commodity. So it is not only the price, there are other factors also influencing the demand for a particular commodity. Okay, there is something called as demand function, which you might get it for 2 marks. So what is the demand function? Demand function is the demand for a commodity depends on all the factors. Just now I have explained to you so many factors, isn't it? So the relationship between the demand for a commodity and its determinants and its factors, if we are expressing it in the form of a mathematical equation, that is what is known as the demand function. So the functional relationship between the demand for a good and all its determinants expressed in the form of a mathematical equation. Okay, so that is what is known as the demand function. So this is the formula, this is the equation. D of x is equal to f of p of x, ps, pc, y, t and n. So d of x here represents the demand for commodity x, f represents functional relationship, p of x represents price of good x, p of s represents prices of substitutes, pc represents prices of complementaries, y represents income of the consumer, t represents taste and preferences, and n represents the population. So if these are all the all these determinants, if you are expressing it in the form of an equation, this is what is known as the demand function. Okay, now I will explain to you briefly the determinants of demand. Now we will move on to the answer. Okay, the question is SAQ 10. What are the factors that determine the demand? Answer: the demand for a commodity depends on so many factors which are known as the determinants of demand. The various determinants of demand are: first one, price of the commodity. The demand for a commodity is inversely related to its price. If the price of a commodity falls, its demand increases and vice versa. Second one, prices of substitutes and complementaries. The demand for a commodity is directly related to price of its substitute and indirectly related to price of its complementaries. For example, substitutes: if the fares of Uber cab is more, people prefer Ola cabs, assuming Ola cabs fare is lesser than Uber cabs. I mean, you can give any example. Complementaries: if the price of petrol increases, the demand for car decreases. Car and petrol, they are complementary commodities. Okay, moving to third one, income of the consumer. If the income of the consumer increases, the demand for superior goods increase while that of inferior goods decrease, and vice versa. Remember Sona Masuri rice and broken rice. If you remember the example, then it will be easy for you to write the answer. Fourth one, taste and preferences. The demand for a commodity depends on changes in taste and preferences of a consumer, and also due to changes in fashion. For example, the demand for trousers has increased currently, which decreased the demand for dhotis. Dhotis are traditional wear. Nobody prefers to wear dhotis now, isn't it? Tastes vary from person to person, and it is also influenced by advertisements. Fifth one, population. If the size of population increases, then the demand for good food grains, clothes, housing, etc. will be more, and vice versa. Sixth one, technological changes. Technological progress also influences the demand. For example, due to discovery of cell phones, the demand for landline phones have decreased. Seventh point, changes in weather. Demand changes according to changes in seasons and climatic conditions. Demand for cotton clothes and cool drinks will be more in summer, while the demand for woolen clothes and hot beverages will be more in winter. Eighth and the last one, state of business. Demand also changes as per changes in business. During prosperity or boom, demand expands, but during depression, it contracts. Okay, these are all some of the factors that affect the demand for a particular commodity. Hope you have understood. If you have any doubts, please mention it in the comment box. So otherwise, if you find this video useful, please like, share, and also subscribe to my YouTube channel. Okay, until my next class, take care. Bye bye.